In ancient Rome, a father held legal power to kill his own children. No court could stop him. They called it patria potestas. But what the law permitted on paper and what Romans actually tolerated were two very different things. The foundation of this power dates back to the 12 Tables, codified around 450 BCE. Under this archaic law, the paterfamilias, the oldest living male ancestor, held absolute authority over his household. This status, known as patria potestas, bound all descendants in the male line, including adult sons and grandchildren, for as long as the father lived. The father controlled all family assets. Legally, a son owned nothing. Any earnings or property termed a peculium belonged entirely to the father. The paterfamilias also held veto power over his children's marriages. Escape from this authority was rare, requiring the father's death, a change in legal status, or a formal process called emancipation, which grew out of an ancient rule requiring 3 successive sales of a son to break the bond. While jurists like Gaius later described the ius vitae nescisque, the power of life and death, surviving fragments of early law do not contain an open-ended license to murder. Rather, the claim that no court could stop a father simply reflects the absence of any public magistrate or family court with the authority to intervene. In 340 BCE, during the Latin War, Titus Manlius Torquatus ordered his own son's execution. The youth had disobeyed orders, defeating the Latin champion Geminus Maetius in single combat before returning victorious. According to Livy's account in Ab Urbe Condita, Torquatus had the army assemble to witness the execution. This was military discipline, not domestic murder. The father chose public obedience over private pride, establishing a severe precedent later labeled Manlian discipline. In 63 BCE, a different crisis arose. Senatorial son Aulus Fulvius left Rome to join Catiline's conspiracy. Sallust and Plutarch record that his father intercepted Fulvius on the road and put him to death. While Torquatus enforced battlefield order, Fulvius's father acted on political allegiance and suspected treason. These accounts are ancient moral narratives, not household statistics. They do not prove routine family killings. Instead, they represent exceptional literary framing, leaving the actual frequency and daily legality of the father's ultimate power entirely uncertain. The Roman familia was a political and economic unit. Through the paterfamilias, the state organized property ownership, inheritance rules, domestic labor, family ancestry, and the transmission of citizenship. This single household head represented the entire group before the wider community. Roman public order depended on this strict internal discipline, obedience, and civic duty. 2 ancestral concepts made such absolute authority intelligible: pietas, the sacred duty owed to family, gods, and country, and mos maiorum, the binding custom of the ancestors. While the father's power was absolute on paper, informal social limits governed daily life. A father typically consulted a concilium, an advisory council of senior male relatives. Kin pressure, communal honor, and religious expectations restrained arbitrary domestic violence. Public magistrates, specifically the censors, could disgrace and sanction abusive fathers, though no child protection courts existed. Rome's celebrated legal civilization stopped at the threshold, leaving the household's internal jurisdiction supreme. Social acceptance of this hierarchy did not mean routine killings. It preserved the structural foundation of the state. In the early 2nd century CE, Emperor Hadrian stripped the father's ultimate legal shield. Preserved in Digest 48.9.5, an imperial ruling declared that a father who killed his son was to be punished like a brigand rather than protected by his paternal role. This established the decisive turning point. Paternal status no longer excused domestic homicide. The lethal immunity was gone, even though the father's legal status as household head remained. Over the next 2 centuries, the state steadily expanded its control. Edicts increasingly restricted infant exposure, deliberate killing, and domestic abuse. In 318 CE, Emperor Constantine classified filicide as parricide, exposing murderous fathers to the execution of the poena culae, being sewn into a leather sack with wild animals and drowned. These reforms were gradual and uneven, driven by a mix of state control, public order, and shifting Christian norms. By the time of Justinian's legal compilations between 529 and 534 CE, the legal shift was complete. Justinianic law preserved the status-based hierarchy of patria potestas, but explicitly rejected any legitimate paternal power to kill. The ancient authority survived, but the lethal immunity did not. Unlike modern parental authority, which exists under the constant oversight of state child protection laws, the Roman patriarch kept his vast economic and legal dominance. The state did not replace the father, it simply drew a line at the threshold of life and death. The Roman patriarch is gone, but the boundary between family privacy and state authority is still redrawn daily. Who governs the home? Share your thoughts below.